Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network, where we currently have 29 live broadcasts a week. Our show today is Global Adventures, and the star of our show is JenettaBarry. And if you don't know Jenetta, you need to get to know her. She has 4 shows today on our platform, and she is, in addition to being a co-host, she's also an expert presenter on Talking Heads. She just did her Talking Heads episode earlier today. She's an elevated listener, and she's also a panelist on A Woman's Prerogative. She is also someone who knows people all around the world, bringing people together, helping to celebrate mental health, wellness, and to really make the conversations about suicide, anxiety, and depression comfortable conversations where you're not being shamed or banned because you're talking about these topics that are relevant and occurring all over the world. Let's welcome her today. And we've got a special guest. It's her son, Neil. He's joining us on Global Adventures. Let's welcome Jenetta. Hi.
Hey, Dr. JACALYN. Wow, this show fills me with so much pleasure. This is kind of like my hobby. And is less cerebral. So it's an absolute pleasure to be back on air again tonight, or today, or this morning,
today,
or wherever
you are.
Is.
And by the way, I love the background. I just feel so alive. And earlier today, you did another show, The Art of Creating Mental Health Wealth, and you were sharing with us about the wonderful visuals that you saw there on the safari bike ride. So tell us, what is the purpose of this show that we're doing today? And what can people expect when they tune in every other week to watch the show?
What I love about this show is that we've put it together so that we can share people's experiences in different places all around the world. So it's not a travel show where you can go here and do this and, with an itinerary. It's really being able to give a platform for people to share where they've gone, what it's done for them, their spiritual experiences, their reasoning behind it, what it's left them feeling, and really to give a personal insight. By way of example, very soon, we're going to have somebody take us through Ethiopia and all that ancient Christianity, the Coptic church there, and how it came from as far back as King Solomon. Another one through the Antarctic. And today we've got my son Neil, who is actually in South Africa now. He was in Botswana for 9 years, and he recently moved down to South Africa. So I'm going to introduce you and give you a little bit of background. We did give this background in the last episode, but for those of you who weren't with us last time, I'd like to kind of give you a bit of insight into Neil, because Neil was born actually in Johannesburg, South Africa, but raised in Kenya, which is where I am now. And one of the things that was significant for Neil, especially as one of my 4 children, was experiencing a lifestyle in Kenya that allowed for a lot of time in the open, natural, and wild spaces. And he was able to embrace this as a young boy and with us as a family. And we managed to travel to a lot of places in various game reserves. And although he finished his schooling in South Africa and dabbled in catering and then into interior decorating and sales, it wasn't until his stepmother suggested that he became a nature guide that he realized that this was both his comfortable and happy space. And I mean, to me, it fills me through with so much pleasure to know that my child is is in his place doing what he really wants to do for the rest of his life. So many people, I mean, I was in my late 40s before I really stepped into what I knew I was really here for. And the ensuing years took Neil round a variety of East and Southern Africa reserves, both for his work and for pleasure. And he's worked his way up from being an apprentice, literally an apprentice, where he was fixing toilets and roads and cleaning those toilets and making beds and cooking food, but maybe not in that order. And to being a guide and then being a manager of his first 5-star camp at the age of 21. And then he did a combination of guiding and managing at a variety of camps in South Africa until he got the opportunity to be general manager of a flagship camp in the middle of the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And if anybody has not been to the Okavango Delta in Botswana, I suggest you make a plan, because it's one of Africa's best kept secrets and one of the most unspoiled parts of Africa left. And I just love it dearly. Neil's 9 years in Botswana saw him eventually manage wilderness safaris, Mombo Camp, and after the birth of his first daughter, my granddaughter, Arabella Jennifer, he took a position in the local town of Maun in Botswana. And you've got to know, Maun, I call it the one donkey town. But it is the gateway into this amazing paradise that's the Delta. And that saw him responsible for the local and international logistics of getting supplies and sending them into remote camps. A lot of stuff could be taken overland, but a lot of getting there took flying into there. And then taking on the IT infrastructure and the operations of a number of camps until he was eventually responsible for the overall CAPEX for this large business. And this saw him responsible for all projects. And he was the in-country project manager for the building of basic tented camps, but also oversaw major refurbishments and rebuilds of premier lodges for the company. And his passion for the industry and business also saw him become the director for Wilderness Air Botswana. He now resides with his family in Timbavati, Greater Kruger Park. And we were just before we came on air, when we were all three backstage, my granddaughter Arabella came popping through saying hi, because they'd just come back from their 1.5-hour drive from school through the game park and had seen a leopard in a tree. So that's the lifestyle they're enjoying over there. And he oversees 4 camps on this private reserve and enjoys an incredible nature and bush-based lifestyle with his 2 girls, Arabella, Kiara, and my very special Ashley. So, Neil, welcome back as we carry on with the adventures. Last episode, we talked about your childhood in Kenya and how rich that was. Now you're going to share an adventure that you did with the 4 of you. Do you want to, first of all, welcome, and then let's hear all about this adventure. Welcome.
Welcome, Neil. Nice to have you back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back. Really nice to be on here, and I must admit, especially nice to be with my mum as well, talking about all of this. So yeah, thank you for having me back.
It's a pleasure, and especially for me, being mother and son together. I absolutely love this. I just have a quick question for you, for people who are joining us for the first time. What is a safari guru?
So Safari Guru is an African travel specialist company. So my wife particularly is a travel specialist, and I come on as an advisor. And ultimately, what we do is curate journeys throughout Africa for people to come and experience all of the wild places that we love so much, you know. But it can be quite a daunting thing for everyone or for anyone who hasn't been to Africa to really try and plan, because there are so many different logistical things that you have to worry about, and, you know, the standards of camps and the prices and the offering and time of year. So we basically take all of that with our knowledge, and then, you know, use it to create itineraries that really really match what people want and bring these lifetime of memories across.
Thank you so much for explaining that. I appreciate it. And Jenetta, over to you for the question you had.
Well, more an intro into, I know, Neil, post-COVID, the restrictions in Botswana for you and the girls and Ashley were very extreme. Especially for Ash, she had the kids at home, and in Botswana, you had to get a permit to go shopping, Dr. Jacalyn, a permit to go to the shops. Neil was able to get out a little bit more because you were helping the community through the company, weren't you?
Yeah, 100%. So, we had these permits that were required, and I managed to get a permit. I worked with the government to try and distribute face masks and sanitizers throughout the community. So we're organizing all of the sponsorship for that, and then organized the distribution with some of my logistical work knowledge there that really worked nicely. So yeah, I had free reign, and my dearest wife Ashley had to stay around home mostly and homeschool the children, and weren't allowed out of the yard. And only one person was allowed to go to the shop, and every time you wanted to apply for a permit, it would take a few days for it to come through. So it was very restrictive at that time, and not particularly nice for a good family life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know as things started easing, something started stirring in you. I mean, you're an incredibly intuitive and spiritual being. From the day they put you in my arms as you were born, I could feel it and see it, and those twinkling, mischievous eyes from early on. So something happened within you. Do you want to explain what it was whilst you were in Botswana, and what it inspired you to step into doing from there?
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting time, and I think COVID for many people obviously helped recalibrate and put things into perspective in terms of what was important in life. So I spent, during that COVID period, I was also overseeing the build of a uber luxurious 5-star camp, which saw me drive through the Delta probably once a week, once every 2 weeks roughly, and I was traveling. It would take me a day's driving each way to do this because we couldn't go any other way. So that left a lot of reflection time, and then I've just felt something was out, and I went with my intuition with this, and I ultimately what I did is I then organized a camping trip. So a lot of people know Botswana for the Okavango Delta, as you mentioned, but Botswana itself is actually 90% desert. And the Okavango Delta is just all this water that comes into the desert, and everything comes into life. But the desert itself, if you travel into the desert, it's this most remote experience where there's nothing around. So I decided to take a trip into the desert by myself, and then decided to take my eldest daughter Arabella with me, and went on a bit of a recalibration, soul-finding mission, and ended up camping for 5 nights in the middle of the desert. And although it looks really dead there, it's actually really alive with life. And so it was nice to immerse myself in that properly with my daughter. But what I did to kind of find myself a little bit more and try and find balance was every day I would use a journal, and I'd just write down, all the thought processes that were coming through about life at the time and in general. And it ultimately led me to come up with a list of core non-negotiables for myself, within a work context, within a parenting context, within a relationship context, and just at a base level as well. So I came up with a list of core non-negotiables. And when I had written these down, I realized that I'd only, especially for my work side of things, I'd only ticked off 3 of the 8 that I considered core non-negotiables. So I was living in imbalance. and I needed to do something to rectify this. So it wasn't a split second decision just to go and try and rectify it. It took a little bit of time after that, and working it through with my wife and trying to work out where we should go and what we should do and how we change things up in a COVID environment where, obviously there was not a lot happening around the place. So it took a while, and the idea started to form that I needed to spend more time with the family because I'd been out a lot and, hadn't really spent much time. And I needed to really get into what I was doing this all for at the end of the day, which was traveling and being in nature with the family. And so the idea sprung up that I wanted to actually go on a large trip with my family and experience that and get them into nature and really have all of these life experiences together. And that slowly formed into actually taking a 3-month trip, and led me to resign my job despite not having anything else on the other side. So it was, some would say foolish, but I went with living by my intuition and knowing that if I do what I do, the rest will come into place, and doing it for the right reasons. So I resigned, and we started to form this whole plan of this trip of where we were going, and trying to plan what that would look like in a COVID environment, which was certainly interesting in many factors. But yeah, that's what led us to the point of where we were going to take a 3-month trip.
It's really quite fascinating, especially to be able to spend that kind of quality time with your family, during an uncertain time. So what would you say were, go ahead, Jenetta. No, I was going to say, what have you heard from your girls about the major takeaways from the trip?
I think for them particularly, it was nice to have both their mom and dad together, traveling around the place. They loved all of the new experiences, right? They were fortunate enough to get quite a bit of nature when we were living in Botswana, just because of where we were. So that wasn't anything new to them, but the traveling together as a unit, and for them, actually sleeping in a tent for 3 months and cooking on a fire all the time, and just a sense of adventure, which even now they get into a car and they go to school, as my mom alluded to. They do an hour and a half each way per day, so it's 3 hours of driving to school a day, and they love it. They love being in a car. They love being in nature, and they're definitely that's where they get their energy from. It's where it stills them. They become a lot more calm and relaxed. So I think they've really grounded themselves in nature as a result of doing this all.
Dr. Jacalyn and Neil, I'm going to share the experience I had with Bella and Kiara when I was there in March, and doing the show from your house, and this exactly explains it all, because Bella has one of those mats where there are roads and shops and hotels, and and you drive your toy car around and so on. So she says, "Can we play cars on this mat?" I said, "Yeah, come, let's." So I'm down on the floor with Bella and Kiara with going, okay. So she says, "Choose your car, and now you've got to choose the animal that you are that's driving that car." So all these plastic wild animals came out, and and I think I chose a giraffe, and she chose a lion, and Kiara chose a hippo, say. And we're pretending that our animals are driving around, and then Bella's conducting the whole thing, and she says, "Now we need to go to the shops because we have to eat." Okay, off we go. We're off to the shops, and she says, "What do you need to eat if you're the giraffe?" So she tells me, "Grass. You just need grass. So we'll order grass." And then she says, "The hippo, well, yes, grass as well. So you're okay, but I need meat." I need meat. So now I've got to capture the meat. And then suddenly this lion that she went and killed the animal and said, okay, we've got meat now. And, you know, I just sat there going, where in the world do children play where it's acceptable to kill the animal and say, okay, we got meat now? Because she was in tune with the natural order of things. I sat and laughed for so long. I thought, what an experience for her and for me as a grandmother. And it's all this sort of thing that's taught her the order and disorder within nature and how to handle it.
Yeah, it's amazing because, and thanks for sharing that story, because it's not like watching National Geographic or seeing pictures in a book. It's firsthand knowledge from having witnessed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. I mean, like my girls know, like they'll listen to the impalas calling in the background there, and like the one morning Arabella came through and she said, Daddy, the impalas are calling in the background there. Can you hear them? I said, yeah, I can hear them. And she said, but you know, Daddy, those impalas aren't calling because there's something that might eat them and they're scared. They're calling because the daddy's chasing the mommy around. So they've really become in tune with what's happening with the animals around the place. And I think that, you know, that also just sums up how the children are brought up around here.
Yeah, so true. So Neil, I wanted to suggest that you left Botswana and went through to Namibia. Is there anything you want to cover before we go to Namibia, or can we go straight into Namibia?
Yeah, I think we can go straight into Namibia. Hey, it's such a wonderful destination, you know. Although, I mean, what we did do is we traveled down from Maun to Johannesburg, and then packed the trailer and put a rooftop tent and really prepped the vehicle, because we went in my 4-wheel drive and packed a trailer that with everything that we thought we may need for a 3-month trip. And having done a lot of camping, I thought I knew most of what was required. But it was a lot with 2 children. So we packed all of this, and then we went from Johannesburg and we drove through to the Kalahari. And ultimately that was quite an experience. It was the first leg of the trip. And we traveled through South Africa. It probably took about a day to get to where we wanted to go. And when we got there, it was the first leg of the trip, and unfortunately didn't really get off to a really good start, because my eldest daughter started to get quite sick. And we ended up putting up this tent up in pristine wilderness. I mean, we had lions that came past at least one of the nights whilst we were camping, but she started to get really sick, and she really just wasn't displaying great symptoms, and it caused us a lot of heartache for the first 4 or 5 days, and it tested our resolve after having resigned and put all of this together and months of preparation. The first thing that happens is our children get sick in a small tent. Which was not quite so much fun. But at least we managed to get through it, and then we carried on from there through to the Fish River Canyon, and we had to drive quite a distance around and go through the Namibian border post, and through a border post we'd never been before. And through, you know, each step of the way, we had to get a COVID test to try and get through each border post, which included our 2 young children as well. And for anyone who's had a COVID test, it's not a particularly enjoyable experience when you're getting swabbed up the nose for it. But we got through and went through to the most incredible area, which is the Fish River Canyon. And this Fish River Canyon is, it's just deep ravines and gorges, and, you know, beautiful landscapes, and, you know, cloud cover over the top with the Fish River going through the bottom of it. and we spent quite a few days here exploring this area, and camping in one or two different spots. And what was the most amazing of it all for the trip was is that there was really nobody else traveling around at that particular time. So we had most of it to ourselves, and one or two diehard travelers like us to experience it with, and share the experience. So it was probably, in terms of the COVID protocols, was the best thing to do because nobody else was around. We were able to travel into these hugely open spaces and experience an amazing vista of things. And just being around that first phase, I could feel through our whole family. It's just, our perspective shifted very quickly, and we just relaxed and straight away got into the vibe of what this long trip was going to be.
So Neil, I'm going to share an overall view of Namibia, so people who don't know Namibia can get an idea of what it's about. Let me just go here. I'm doing well. Okay, so here, that's the other one. Oh, I'm doing well again this show. Let me just go.
That looks like something else.
View, it does, and it's an amazing picture. So I'm just going to go back again and try once again. There's the window there. That's what I'm wanting to share. So this is, I just put together an overview of what Namibia has to offer.
Wow.
When you look at that, it is the most incredible country. And those horses are feral horses that were left behind by the German army after the First World War, and they've adapted in the desert. Amazing. But Neil, I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you did all of that and so on. So I thought I'd just quickly share a couple of things that you were talking about there as well. First of all, there's, they're not all here, but I'll share this one whilst I'm getting the others. What's that, Neil?
Well, that's actually the first campsite that we talked about, right? And that's an A-frame wooden structure that you can eat under, just to protect you from the sun that comes down. It's blistering that side of the world. So you put your tent just on the outside of that, and you eat within that little A-frame, and there's a little fireplace on the side, and you make your fire every night, and you're right in the middle of the wild there. You can just sit there and you can listen to the jackals calling in the background and the odd lion roaring. And it's certainly quite an incredible wild camping destination. I find you don't get too many of those in the world anymore, where you can just go and be completely disconnected, no mobile signal, no electricity. Running water is very, very limited, and so you're camping wild in these areas. And then your routine is you get up early in the morning, get into the car, go do a game drive, see what's going on around the place, maybe pack a little breakfast so you can stay out there for a little bit longer, and then come back. And during the midday heat is just get a bit of a reprieve. And then in the afternoons again, you'd head out and go do another game drive and see what that brings about. And you'd typically find different things at different times. And come back, start a fire, cook all your food over it, and then end it off with some roasted marshmallows with the kids. So yeah, that's a typical campsite for that all.
Neil, just a couple questions. So you mentioned about the blistering heat at night. Does that change dramatically?
It does. It changes. Again, it's dependent on the time of year. Certainly in winter, it changes to very cold. Summertime, it's not quite so extreme, and that's actually what for our kids, that heat exchange was probably what caught them off guard initially, and they got a little sick from that.
Thank you. Another question I have is, I watch some reality TV shows about people being put alone somewhere in the world, and they've got to live off the land. Is this a location that would be a good one for a reality TV shoot about living there for 30 or 40 days by yourself?
Yeah, that would certainly test even the most seasoned veteran at that sort of thing. It is very wild out there, and there are not a lot of resources. So there are some trees and some pumped water holes around the place, but unless you really know what you're looking for, it's going to be difficult to get any food. It's actually, that particular area is quite interesting because if you drive through it, there's a bunch of abandoned old stone houses along a ridge, and way back 100 years ago, they used to post people out into these far outreaches to protect the boreholes that had been dug by the old South African government, and they dug it because there was a potential conflict between South Africa and Namibia. And so these boreholes were meant to sustain the troops if there was going to be this conflict. So they'd position it. And those guys, they lived off the borehole water that came, and they had a carbine rifle, which they'd shoot the occasional springbok to eat. But there was nothing else. It would take them 5 days to even get through to remote civilization from there.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Jenetta, you're on mute. Okay.
Oh, yes. So a whole load of stories from Namibia, and, mining towns just abandoned overnight is another one, which I'm sure you'll share another time, Neil. But one of the things that we've got sharing now is a very interesting set of nests, and I'll leave you to explain to everybody what they are.
Yeah, these are great. These are awesome. You see them all around that park, particularly, and they're these big. They call them sociable weavers, and they create these big communal nests around the place, which are like, you've got these big trees that are randomly placed. There are not a lot of them, and then it almost looks like a carpet in the tree. And these tiny little weaver birds come, and they create these nests out of all the long grass that's around the area. And so they're one of the highlights of the area that you're in the Kalahari because of these. Really, really beautiful. But you've got to be quite careful, because they sometimes build these big. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so basically they build these very low down in some of the trees, and if you camp underneath them, there's what we call a symbiotic relationship between them and a particular wasp or hornet that puts their nest in there as well. So if you get too close, you may actually end up regretting it. But obviously, of how that works is it's a symbiotic relationship, because they get all this shelter from the storm, the wasps, that is, they get shelter from the storm, and in return they offer protection to the birds. So if anything comes through, they sting it.
Wow, how cool is that?
I think because it's such a tiny picture, it loses perspective there, because each of those nests are, those big balls, exercise balls, they're as big as those exercise balls, aren't they, Neil?
Yeah, they can be as big as a bed. Some of those nests, they're really large nests. So when we say communal, we mean communal. They're really big communities of birds. And so those trees take a lot of weight, and sometimes you'll see the odd branch that's actually snapped, or a tree that's kind of been pushed over in the wind as a result of this excessive weight.
And each one is a village or even a universe on its own, isn't it? They don't interrelate with each other.
No, so they don't connect. Inside that there's multiple chambers in each particular segment. So you'll see in that particular photo, there's probably about 7 or 8 different nests there, but each one is its own community.
Yeah, exactly. And then another one I wanted to share was you with Bella. It is Bella. Yes, it is Bella. Let's share that. what's that story?
So if just gone.
There we go. Voila.
There we go. So that's a beautiful picture of what that is. You can see that her hair is blowing around, and what little hair I have is also blowing around. And it's that is what I was talking about, which is the Fish River Canyon in the background there. And that incredible canyon, it just opens up to this vast expanse. And you can drive around there literally for 2 days and just see a different viewpoint, every hour, or do a 3 or a 5 day hike into the base of that, and really walk in and get to experience this untouched area. And that meanders, all of those channels meander all the way through. So it could be, it could be likened to the Grand Canyon. In the US, it's got very, very similar look and feel to it. Not that I've been there, but from what I've seen, and it's just that this is set in this incredibly wild area, very arid, and then there's this river that goes through it. So it's quite special in that way.
What's that?
It's a really interesting tree. So again, you can see it's very arid over there. If you take a look on the ground, there's a lot of dark rock. So that's volcanic rock, which shows that there was obviously lava that came through the area, and the tectonic movements that would have happened that helped create that Fish River Canyon. And that tree looks dead, but it's not. But it's actually called a quiver tree. And they grow just randomly, these trees around the place in the middle of the desert. And it's called a quiver tree because this area before used to be San, or the Khoisan Bushman people live in it. And, again, these guys really, if you want to talk about survival masters, these guys are it. They could live in these remote desert environments as family units and survive off everything that is there. And this particular tree, they would take the branch, and the branch would be quite hollow, so they would house their arrows, the quivers, in branches, and then sling it over their back and walk. And they would use these little blow arrows that they would put little poison on the end, and then blow it onto a springbok or a hare or whatever animal they came across. And that's how they would do their hunting back in the day. So there's quite a bit of history with that area as well.
Neil, this is a good time to talk about the Khoisan, because they've got their quivers and their arrows with special natural poison from the land, and they're such a spiritual tribe that before they kill that animal, they talk to it and explain why they're going to kill it, and thank it for what it's going to do for them and for completing its journey on the cycle of life, and appreciating it. And that always takes my breath away. But you might want to talk a bit more about the Khoisan as well before we end up today.
Yeah, absolutely. They're an incredible culture, and really a culture that goes way back. And as you said, they're hugely respectful of the environment they live in, and they appreciate every aspect of what it takes to survive, because they've really had to learn to live off the land in these incredibly harsh environments. And so, that kind of culture, for me personally, talks to me a lot, because it is so considerate of the environment, and nothing is done in excess. And so it's been an interesting immersion of modern day culture into the Khoisan culture. It's created quite a few interesting dynamics, and unfortunately their culture hasn't fared too well as a result of it. So there's very few people within the Khoisan that practice that way of life anymore. But it's I mean, I must laugh because you talk about the Khoisan people, and I remember growing up with a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy, and it was all about the Khoisan people and this particular family that were in Botswana, actually, because they're in Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, and kind of the more arid environments and beyond. And this Khoisan family that gets a Coke bottle, they find it in the bush, and they suddenly this Coke bottle is it means they can do so much with it. They can crush grain with it. They can hit things and pound it to make it soft. They can roll things with it. And this glass Coke bottle became this amazing thing that everyone wanted to go after. In the Khoisan culture, nothing belonged to anyone. And so it created this dynamic within the group that they couldn't handle. And so eventually they sent the one person away to go throw the Coke bottle off the edge of the world, because the gods must have been crazy to send it. And I think it was such a good way of actually personifying the culture and the people and the modern world coming in and how they had to adapt.
It's really fascinating. I would just like to spend 1 year there, just experiencing everything you're experiencing. It's as opposed to watching it on a program or reading about it, you're living it.
Yeah, it's quite an incredible area. And I mean, Namibia as at large, they call it the land of stark contrasts. Because you've got like that Fish River Canyon with that river going through it, and these quiver trees that dot the environments, and these massive birds' nests that are on top of the trees, and the sand, you've got desert sand and volcanic rock, and then it turns into this beautiful red sand that then eventually meets the sea, and you've got the sea hitting these sand dunes, and wildlife that still walks along, and hippos, and like it's just this mix of everything. And then as you go further up, just long stretches of these huge mountains, rocky outcrops, and beautiful change in color in each mountain, one black mountain and one red mountain, much lighter white ones. And as you go more central into the country, it's got all these natural minerals, the rocks that you can break open with all these crystals. And you drive along, and people have broken these rocks up and put them onto tables. They make a living out of selling these crystals, and these beautiful big rocks opened up with pink and greens and oranges and blue all the way along. It's just mind blowing, and that's why they call it the land of stark contrasts. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways there was driving as a family on these open roads, and just having all of this come up continuously, and just around every corner or over every hill, it was just this vista that would take your breath away, and you just have to stop and take photos. And so you just find yourself stopping every step of the way just to breathe it all in and appreciate the raw natural beauty of the area.
And I have to add there, that was when Neil was saying, Bella would say, not another photo.
Yeah, exactly it. So true. It wasn't, Dad, are we there yet? Not another photo.
Neil, do you have any of these crystals?
Yes, so my wife Ashley bought a few from the guys. I don't have them available right now, but yes, we got quite a few of them, not only to help the local economy, but just because they were so beautiful.
Yeah, I'd love to have you share them on a future show, because we've had a number of people on who talk about crystals, and they have power to them, healing power.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that would be fun.
Well, I think it's quite interesting when you go into this area. There's a town that's based around all of these hills that have all of these rocks, and it's certainly got a very different feel to it when you drive through there, particularly because you are you've traveled far on these dirt roads, and then suddenly there are all these amazing crystals, and it's hard to describe what it feels like, but you definitely, there's almost a sense of excitement that comes from being in an area like that. And it could be the crystals, it could be just because of the area, but that town in particular had a very different feel to it.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much, Neil, for everything that you're sharing, because this is, where I am right now, looking out the window, I'm not seeing any of these things that you're talking about. So I just love learning, and the fact that you have this expertise that you shared with your family, and you and Jenetta are doing this together. I think it's really beautiful.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
What an amazing opportunity. And thank you, Neil, for sharing all of this.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. There's so much more to it, which is what makes it so nice, But it's definitely that sense of adventure, which I think lives strong in a lot of people, and it's nice to be able to talk about it and hopefully inspire others to travel and bond and ground themselves in the natural world.
Absolutely. And Neil, we have your banner here, but for people who are listening on one of our radio stations, or they're going to listen as a podcast, what's the best way for people to reach you, and who should contact you?
So the best way is to actually go onto our website, and there's contacts. My wife's contact, she's a lot more organized than I am, so she's the best person, Ashley. So her email address, as you can see, would be ashley@safari-guru.com. Or you can follow us, living in the bush and sharing these natural adventures. I post daily on Instagram as to what it is we've seen and what's going on and any interesting things. So my handle is the_wild_safari_life. And there's a lot of interesting things that come up there. Just yesterday, we had wild dogs around the area, and I posted a video of them feeding their puppies and all the noises that comes with that. So it's a very interesting life.
Thank you so much. And Neil or Jenetta, can you please drop the email address into the chat? That would be great.
Sure, I will do that now.
Oh, Jenetta's doing it too. It's a race. Who's going to have it done first?
Much faster than I am.
I bow graciously to one side.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll share this.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me just pop this over here into the comments. All right, and I'll put it on the screen as well. So that's Ashley. You're welcome. ASHLEY @Safari SAFARI-Guru GURU.com. Thank you very much, Neil. And Jenetta, how about you? What's the best way to reach out to you, and who should contact you?
Well, basically, if you want to know how to communicate without from a place of fear and judgment, which really makes it very distorted. If you'd like to be able to communicate clearly and succinctly and specifically, then contact me at theepiphanyprocess.com so that you can start new conversations in tricky circumstances. And then the other part is, if you'd like to be part of World Jenny's Day, this 10th of October, either to perform or to help us and support us behind the scenes, we would like to invite you to join us. World Jenny's Day is held every 10th of October because my daughter, Neil's sister, died to suicide when she was 16 mental Jenny, her name, and I had a really large argument. And we realized she died on now I'll get it right, World Mental Health Day. And we now have World Jenny's Day, where we use theatre and the arts to soften and normalize conversations around feeling compromised, depression, suicide ideation, and all their solutions. And instead of trying to fix people who are not broken, this day enables us to celebrate that there are solutions, and that it's about being able to shift with skills and shift definitely with creativity, because it softens the conversations. So we have people from all over the world on the 10th of October. They're going to be performing in celebration of mental health wellness. It's called Where in the World is World Jenny's Day? And we would like to invite you to either perform or come and support and back us. And it would be an honor and pleasure to have you there.
Thank you so much, Jenetta. I appreciate that. We have that banner up right now. All right, we are going to sign off for now, and we will be back with Global Adventures in 2 weeks. We look forward to seeing you then, Neil.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.